One of the costliest resources of the Atlanta Fire Rescue Department is its fleet of motorized equipment. The replacement cost of this fleet is over $30 million. With a regular replacement schedule in place and with proper equipment maintenance, the city maximizes its investment and the firefighters can do a better job of saving lives and property. It's well known that today very little new equipment is being purchased. Because of this, the day may come when we do not have the necessary equipment to respond to alarms. As mayor, how would you deal with this problem?
Well, we have a capital improvement program that when you look at that document, it is a wish list. And so we have to do a better job of prioritizing what we need to purchase, when we need to purchase it. I intend to look at, again, to get in the weeds, to look at what the schedule is so that we have our firemen appropriately equipped. Everything from the vehicles themselves to what are we doing with our fire stations. We have two groups of fire stations. One are huge that we're building right now that are serving multiple purposes, and then we have fire stations that I've been in that are just amazingly, the guys are just great to be in them. So we almost have we have disparate.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the motorized equipment issue, though.
Okay, that David, I would have to take a look at to know what kind of a depreciation, how we could go out and get that equipment and what should be the replacement schedule. And I don't have an answer for you that would be specific enough to please you. So I would love to work with you on what that answer ought to be. Not ought to be, but what your opinion of that answer ought to be.
I really think the reason this is so important is because when you hire people, they kind of around for 25 or 30 years, so it's important to hire the right people. When you buy motorized equipment, it's around 10 or 15 years in the fire service, so it's important that it's well taken care of and it has a good replacement schedule.
Okay.
A lot of the other things you can change rather quickly, so that's the reason I asked that question.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this question. Throughout its history, Atlanta has suffered numerous infamous and tragic incidents that were made worse by inadequate prevention, response, mitigation, and recovery of the Atlanta Fire Rescue Department. In the aftermath, the typical reaction by mayor and council has been a brief period of improvement only to be followed by subsequent decline in the capabilities of the fire service. My fear is that because we are currently in this period of neglect, we're setting ourselves up for another one of these tragic incidents. So do you agree, and if so as mayor, what would you do to reverse this recent trend and to promote a sustainable improvement in the capabilities of the Atlanta Fire Rescue Department?
Well, I've already been on record saying that I would not have brownouts, I would not have furloughs, that we would restore the increments, that we also would reduce. It is my view that we should reduce the steps so that the career ladder is quicker for the firemen. It is also my concern that we institute a drop program for the firemen that they're very interested in doing, so that we have the experienced personnel there in the fire department, because it's my understanding that because we had so many men who were brought in I believe it was 1980 that are getting ready to retire, that we're going to lose a lot of our men and women and a lot of our experience. So I am absolutely committed to the fire department and to making sure that they have the equipment that they need, that they are well trained, that we are manning the engines and the ladders 4 and 4, but if not 4 and 4 as a stopgap measure, 4 and 3. And I have so stated publicly at the IAFF meeting the other night. I'm very interested in getting into the weeds again on the EMS service that our guys are getting there after Grady is getting to an incident, and then they are not available if there is a fire because they're over at the EMS location. So former chief, or does it still say chief? So chief, I have been talking with your men and women and met with some of them last Friday night. Very interested in understanding ground level up what their issues are and what their needs are, and am committed to do that. And as a personal point of preference, I have a cousin who is a captain in the Atlanta Fire Department.
Thank you. Two of the critical components in order to accomplish the fire service mission of saving lives and property are a quick response and a functional staffing that accompany your unit. Which of these two do you consider to be the most important, the quick response or the functional staffing?
Why do I have to choose?
Well, I think one good reason is because it would be easy to say a quick response, and it only takes one person to get there or to get the rig there.
But then you don't have enough men to effectively, for their own safety, to be able to fight the fire.
What would you consider a responsible and reasonable response time for the first due fire unit to arrive on the scene in Atlanta from the time dispatch dispatches them or they get the call?
It's my understanding it should be 3 minutes.
It's kind of a national accepted level. I think Atlanta, you're looking at about 6 minutes, which is also a pretty acceptable level, depending on how that's classified. New York City, from the time the rig starts to go till they get there, it's 3 minutes. In Atlanta, it's from the time the person makes contact with dispatch. And so when you figure the dispatch time and the get out of the house time, you know, these times could be changed from one to the other. So I would accept 3, 4, 5, or 6 minutes, depending on how you describe that. But I'm curious as to how the policy makers in Atlanta, what they consider to be responsible and acceptable response time.
Chief, explain to me what you're asking. Are you asking me 3 minutes versus 6 minutes? Are you asking me what I would like to see as the optimum?
I'm trying to actually help you give me the answer by saying that there's different definitions of what's acceptable. But what I am saying is this: I think we nationwide, and especially in the city of Atlanta, we need to have, as policy people, we need to have an idea what is acceptable response time from the time the citizen calls the dispatch center till that resource arrives on the scene. That's fire, police, emergency medical service, everything. I'm here to talk about fire service. I'm curious what that would be.
Well, first of all, I would need to see, because it's my role as a council person and not serving on the Public Safety Committee, I don't have, all of that information either in my head or at my disposal. But what I think is critical is that we take into account our infamous traffic. Because as I've looked at the circles that have been going around as we've been browning out stations, I am very concerned that it's a theoretical and not an actual. Because I live in a town, and I live in the epicenter of the traffic, right near the epicenter of Buckhead. So I understand that what you could say theoretically happens is not what happens when we are trying to get from one part of our very congested city to another.
But the way this is actually done is when an acceptable time is determined, then there's a certain percentage of that time that it happens, and the rest of the time it could be over. So 70% of the time, if 4 minutes response time, then you're doing good. If you're not, then you need more stations or whatever.
Right.
But I want to ask one more question before my time runs out.
Yes, sir.
And that is, in light of recent news stories and so forth, Atlanta is at the process of getting or is threatened to have their insurance service office rating moved from a 2 to a 4.
Right.
This amounts to probably somewhere in the neighborhood of a 13% increase in fire insurance ratings, which are a big part of the homeowner's insurance rating or the business rating or what have you. What do you, as mayor, suggest that the city do about that?
Well, we have to do everything we can to get the rating back. So whatever those procedures are, I am 100% in favor, as is every other candidate who spoke the other night at IAFF. We all understand the importance of the insurance rates and, more importantly, effective fire service.